We're the Screen Team, and we are back, my friends. I'm being joined by David Carroll. We're getting ready to review a movie that I believe David Carroll, this is one of his favorite movies of all time. It's called 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. Is that correct?
It is. It is.
This is one of your favorites, and why is this one of your favorites? Why do you like this one so much?
Well, the first time I watched it, I was a young boy, and I watched it with my dad.
It's funny you say that. The first time I watched it was with my dad a couple weeks ago.
Perfect.
So it's an
great bonding time.
Yeah,
yes.
Very much so. Very much so.
It's really the one that set my interest off in World War II. Mm-hmm. Not just movies, but World War II nonfiction books that were written, particularly those written during the war, under the watchful eye of the War Department.
Sure. So what's going on? It's I'm assuming the time period is right after Pearl Harbor, a couple years after Pearl Harbor?
Actually, months after Pearl Harbor.
Months after Pearl Harbor.
After Pearl Harbor was hit, Franklin Roosevelt had been on the Joint Chiefs to come up with an attack on Japan, mainland Japan. It was thought by the Japanese that it was impossible for any foreign country to attack it because of something that had happened 100 years before when they had a war with, I think, Russia, in which a typhoon wiped out the Russian fleet. And so they had this belief that there was this imperial ordered wind that would protect the island, and they didn't think they could be attacked. And the aftermath of the attack actually led to the Battle of Midway and the beginning of the end for the Imperial Japanese Navy.
So this was definitely a starting point that dropped all the dominoes.
Oh, it did. It started everything off.
In this movie, we've got our main lead actor is Van Johnson.
Van Johnson plays at the time Lieutenant Ted Lawson.
Mm-hmm. And he is, what I find interesting about this film is one thing that I wasn't expecting a love story from this film.
Yes.
I wasn't expecting that at all.
Between him and his wife, Ellen.
Yeah, at the very beginning, he's on base, having fun. There's this big secret, kind of plan that's going to happen. They don't know what it is yet. Yep. And so he's gearing up for that. All of a sudden, his wife shows up and is like, hey, how's it going? So they have,
today's audience may see that and feel that it's kind of corny. However, the book, this came from Ted Lawson's book, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, details this love story in great detail.
I didn't think it was corny. What I was kind of surprised with, and obviously I don't know how the military works. I've never been in the military, but I was surprised. They just got done with the meeting saying this is going to be a top secret thing. You're going to not be able to see your families a lot and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden she's on the base and, he gets to go off base. And I was like, I was kind of surprised that there was some leniency there. I thought it'd been more locked down a little bit.
Well, they did their short takeoff practice at Eglin Field, and they did not have the barracks available at that time for as many, because they had far more planes and crews there to practice than they had that were going to go on the mission. Initially, only 15 B-25s was going to be sent, and they launched off an aircraft carrier, which was something that was just unheard of, with a full bottom load, no less.
So that's why they were showing that scene of when they were on the air base of them trying to take off within 500 feet. Is that right?
Initially 500 feet, and then they ended up taking off within, I think it was 150th before it all said and done. Yes. But, what they did, they turned the Hornet, it was the aircraft carrier Hornet, and they turned it into the wind, and so they had, and went full speed, so they had possibly as many as 30 knots of wind going over the wings when they were taking off anyway. So they didn't have to get up to the same speed that they would on land.
I gotcha. Robert Mitchum is also in this film. He doesn't have a huge part, but he's got a nice size role in this film.
Yeah, he plays his best friend, Bob Gray, who did not survive the war, by the way. And it was one of his, if not his first, it's one of his first movie appearances.
Yeah. Because he doesn't have top billing.
No.
In the early credits, he's kind of down the way, and I was like, that's Robert Mitchum. Come on, folks, show some respect. We also have Spencer Tracy in this role, and Spencer Tracy comes in. He's basically our guy who comes in and says, guys, you got a tough mission, and he goes to explain what's going on, and he says, if anybody here wants to back out, I understand. You won't be discredited or anything like that, but we need everybody on top of their game. And he was kind of like the the coach, you know.
And that was the actual speech that that Jimmy Doolittle gave to the men. They had that movie that came out some years ago, Pearl Harbor.
I'm going to ask you about that. Go ahead.
Absolutely unrealistic. Absolute balderdash. Worst war movie I ever saw.
But what I'm going to, and I agree with you, but what I was going to ask you is, do they show this at the very end? They do, very inaccurately. Okay,
but they do, yes.
Because I remember, I've only seen Pearl Harbor once when it was in theaters, and they show the attack on Pearl Harbor, and then they show Ben Affleck and Josh Hartnett going to Japan and bombing, and I'm like, what is this? And so I didn't understand at the time, but
yeah, in reality, there were no pilots that were at Pearl Harbor at the time of the attack that took place in the.
But it makes for a nice wrap-up bow kind of story for their big epic Pearl
and they
Harbor
did not
movie.
fly as a squadron. They had no fuel to just circle overhead waiting for everybody to get in the air. Once they took off, they made a beeline to the Japanese mainland.
My grandpa was in Pearl Harbor, and I remember showing him the movie, the 2001 movie. I was like, "What'd you think?" He's like, "Oh."
It was horrible.
I was like, all right, we're not going to show that to you again. So is this a movie you revisit, David?
I revisit this regularly. I have the book that was written, if memory serves, 1943 by, at that time, Captain Ted Lawson. Bob Considine helped him write it, and he went on to write many books about the Tokyo raid.
Sure.
And he wrote it over a weekend in a motel room in Washington, D.C.
Oh, really?
And initially it was they were like weekly or monthly installments, and I think it was Collier's Magazine, and later was put in as a book. It didn't really come public until a year after the attack. They did not want to endanger the ones who were captured. We had 2 crews that were captured, and several of the men were all given this ridiculous charade of a trial. And some of them were executed.
Oh, were they really?
Yes.
Oh my
goodness. And they were doing everything they could because they had not heard at that time that there were any executed. They knew that they were held prisoners, so they didn't even let anything come out for over a year.
Oh, my goodness. It's a strong story. It's a good story. It really, really is, and a good movie as well.
And one thing that's not covered in the movie that I wish was.
What's that?
At that time, several military veterans and some active duty who had been awarded medals by the Japanese, particularly during and following World War I. They turned in those medals and to the government, said, please send these back to Japan. And so before the launch, they had a little ceremony on the flight deck of the Hornet where all the air crews and several of the crew of the Hornet gathered on deck, and they carefully wired these medals to the tail fins of a bomb. And that bomb was actually dropped by the ruptured duck, which was Ted Lawson's airplane, B-25 airplane.
That is wild. Wild, man. Wow. I love when I have you on, man. You just come up with you bring the knowledge, and that's what I love about it, man.
I'm the warmonger of the group.
All right, David. Before we go, the stage company of Poplar Bluff has had a great 2018. You've wrapped up your performances of the Odd Couple, which you were in. Also, you guys did a great Christmas show as well.
Laura Ingalls Wilder Christmas.
Wonderful. And we've got 2 more performances here in 2019. We're doing a kind of a mystery, and then we're going to the South Pacific. Tell us more.
Yes. In March, Lee Spielberg will be directing Rehearsal for Murder, which is a murder mystery, and the backdrop is rehearsals for a play, a production. And I really believe that this would be a great one to go see. Lee has directed other shows for us. He's very good at what he does.
And this is going to be his last one,
This
right?
is his swan song with the stage company.
Yeah.
He and his family are moving back east, and they'll be leaving sometime very shortly after that wraps up. And I really encourage everybody to go see it. It's going to be a wonderful show. All of his shows are. And then in June, I will be directing Rodgers and Hammerstein's South Pacific.
Are you sure you want to direct that?
I am sure.
Oh, that's a big undertaking.
It is, but you just don't have that many, hits.
Yeah.
Tony Award-winning hits That's set during World War II.
Sure.
It's
sure.
a
And
musical.
that's you, man. That's you. So what you're saying is either go big or go home.
Absolutely.
Right? All right. He's David Carroll. I'm Chris. Make sure you check out the rest of the 2019 season of the Stage Company of Poplar Bluff. David, thank you so much for being on the show. We got more reviews coming your way right here on the Screen Team.